And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Dennis Webster is our guest. Dennis is a local author, very prolific local author. And we're talking about one of his books, Old Main. Of course, a lot of people called it the Utica Lunatic Asylum. In fact, that was its official first name, wasn't it, Dennis?
Yeah, that was actually an appropriate term for people that had mental illnesses back in 1843 when it opened. Terms like imbecile, lunatic, moron, which things like that are just not considered politically correct today, but those were the terms that they used. Lunatic had to do with the theory that the moon and the tides and the lunar phases had something to do with your brain.
The Dr. Brigham, what was his title?
He was the superintendent, and he was a pretty amazing man. He's buried right here in Utica in Forest Hill. He's right near where Roscoe Conkling was buried. He's got this nice obelisk. But he was a pretty amazing man. He started the moral treatment. He wanted to replicate what Pinel had done in France and in Europe.
And down there's a house, Dennis, and it's boarded up now, but it's a red brick house. It's on the corner of Whitesboro and what would that be, York Street?
Yeah.
So that would be on the northwest corner of York and Whitesboro Street. Was that his house?
Yes, that was the house that the physicians and the superintendent would live in with their family. All the doctors lived on the campus. They didn't live in the building like the nurses and aides did in the very beginning.
Yeah, I've got your book, and I found a picture of the Utica Crib. I don't think that's going to show up too well, but there it is right there, flat like little crib. And then you also had this picture. I think people are going to be able to see that one a little bit better.
Yeah, that restraining chair is actually on display in the first floor. If you do the tour, they've got it sitting there.
And they also, the patients over there, had recreational opportunities, yes?
Oh, sure. They did things like they put on plays. They played musical instruments. They did crafts. They also had occupations. They had workshops in there. They did all sorts of kind of sewing, and they used to make their wares, and they would bring it to the mechanics hall. I don't know if you've ever talked about that place, and then they would sell them.
Yeah. Talk about mechanics hall.
It was a building in Utica where they used to do all sorts of events and fairs, and I guess it was the Utica out of its day before it was here. They would have all sorts of community things there. And
building still stands.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
Yep, and you know, I've seen old pictures of Mechanics Hall, Dennis, and those pictures don't look like the Mechanics Hall today because there's a fire and the roof was replaced, and I think it's a flat roof now, so the original roof is gone. But yeah, that was a big showplace in Utica.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing and revolutionary, the care. In the beginning, every person who would be deemed they needed mental health assistance from the whole state of New York would go to Old Main. And they picked Utica because of it was a real cheap place to build, but also it was centrally located, and they loved that it was right near the Erie Canal. It was just up the hill from the Erie Canal, so they could commute in goods and all sorts of things.
You know, you forget that that's on a hill, whatever we want to call it, Old Main, I guess. You forget that Old Main's on a hill. You can see that building when you're coming in over the Deerfield Hill. You can see that building way off in the distance.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's so beautiful. Even from way up on Deerfield Hill there, you can see those columns, that beautiful front of that building.
What do they do in those other buildings that are those outbuildings today, Dennis? I see activity there. They're maintenance or? Yeah,
they've got some programs and services there. I know there's a couple buildings out behind where the Brigham building is. They still have the Mohawk Valley Psychiatric Center there. They have Pinefield, which is a facility for children.
Yeah, that's across the street, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The Utica Lunatic Asylum also put out, if I recall my history correctly, Dennis, a newsletter, a publication that was
pretty amazing. It was called Opal, and they had a picture of Pinel on the front. And from 1850 to 1859, the residents in Old Main would write, publish, print, and sell that monthly. And they sold thousands of copies of this. It was very, very popular, and it was filled with poems and stories and just all sorts of happenings at the asylum. Very fascinating, and it was a good money generator. I don't know why they stopped running it or doing it, but that was part of the moral treatment too, was they actually ran a printing press. And the editor-in-chief was someone called Asbestos. That was their nom de plume, their pen name. Because a lot of them would use pen names because they didn't want people in the public to know that they were institutionalized. So they would come up with a name.
I can't remember, Dennis, if people have told me this or I've read it, but somewhere I've got in my mind that there were people that were put into the Utica Lunatic Asylum that weren't lunatics, but their family wanted to get rid of them.
True, absolutely.
Yeah.
Back then in 1843, all you needed to do was get a judge or even a local sheriff in any county in the state to say that you had mania or you needed to be put in there. So that absolutely happened. But the one thing about when Brigham started it and then Dr. Gray after him, they would actually release people. So you weren't in there for life. If they felt that, their team of doctors would review your case, they could release you, and they would release you. It was called the cult of curability, where they finally started looking at it as a mental illness, not something like, you're cursed by the devil or it's the moon affliction or whatever. You could be cured and released back into society.
What is that building being used for now? Anything?
They have I guess the Office of Mental Health of the State of New York has a library in there. So they have some offices when you go through where the columns are, just in that middle part, just in there.
I've often thought, Dennis, that if the state could come up with a good use for that building, that would save it. I mean, it's sitting there now. I guess it's getting a little use, but it's a big building.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a gorgeous building. It's a beautiful campus. It's right in the heart center of Utica. I mean, a lot of people love the building, and it would be a darn shame. That's why I know Landmark Societies and Mike Bozak and that group is very instrumental in trying to preserve that building and keep that building, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
You can't replace it.
When we come back, I said that not all your books have done as well. I got a copy of the book that didn't do so good. We'll talk about that in a second. Dennis Webster's our guest. We're talking about his book. Short break, right back.